Loadouts, honestly, I think is one of the most interesting debates in the zombies community. Some people actually love loadouts as it basically gives you more freedom to play the way that you want. But on the other hand, doesn't starting with your own fully customized weapon also take away from what made zombies special in the first place? So today, I wanted to answer the simple question of, do loadouts actually belong in COD Zombies, or should we go back to the classic starting pistol like it used to be back in the day? Now, to understand the debate, we have to go back to what zombies originally was. In classic zombies, you started with basically nothing, where you had a starting pistol and a handful of points, and that's basically it. You were on your own pretty much. Like, you had to actually explore the map, buy weapons off the walls, open doors, hit the mystery box, and slowly build yourself up over time. You weren't powerful because the game chose the perfect loadout before the match. You were powerful because you earned it by playing the game efficiently. It also added tension to the game, as since you're more vulnerable, you can go down way easier by making a simple mistake. Whereas you could argue that loadouts removes a lot of that tension, but I do want to also be fair and say that loadouts aren't automatically a bad thing, as one of the biggest advantages is player choice, which is pretty much the whole philosophy of modern zombies, in my opinion. Because maybe you don't want to use the same starting pistol every single game, or maybe you've unlocked a specific weapon that you really enjoy and really want to use from the start of the match. Because I do think loadouts do allow players to experiment with different strategies, as you can build around a particular weapon, playstyle, or perk combination, or even use specific augments for specific strategies. And for players who don't have hours to spend grinding every session, being able to jump into zombies and immediately use their gear they enjoy is honestly a huge positive. There's also the fact that modern Call of Duty is just built around customization. Like, multiplayer Warzone also have loadouts, so from a gameplay perspective, it makes sense why zombies would eventually adopt the system too. I mean, hell, Black Ops 1 Zombies was supposed to have kill streaks, if that tells you anything. But here's where things get interesting, because the biggest problem isn't necessarily that loadouts exist, but it's what they can do to progression. Because if I can enter a zombies match with the exact same weapon I want, already customized to my preferred playstyle, then one of the biggest reasons to explore the map kinda disappears. Like, why buy a wall weapon or hit the mystery box if I already have the exact gun I want to use? And why experiment with different weapons if I can just bring in the same overpowered setup into every game? You know what I mean? And that's where zombies can start feeling a little less like a survival experience and more like an RPG type of experience. Another issue I inherently have with loadouts, and I kind of brought it up a little bit earlier, but it does take a lot of the risk away from the game too, in my opinion. Like, for example, the mystery box. Because the mystery box was never just a way to get a random weapon, but it was also a risk as well. You would spend a lot of your hard-earned points to try and spin the box and hope you get something useful, and sometimes you would get the gun you wanted, and sometimes you would get absolute garbage. And sometimes you would get a super powerful weapon like the thunder gun, where you could completely change your strategy around it. It just seems like there's absolutely no risk to hitting the box anymore. Also, when players can simply just bring their favorite weapons into the match, it also makes the mystery box become less important as well. Like, the mystery box, especially in BO7, since you can't even get the wonder weapon out of the box without building it, is kinda useless in my opinion. Another argument that I see about loadouts is you can argue it makes the game too easy, which I can kind of agree with that as well. Because depending on the gun, most of the time you're just going to literally spawn in with the best weapon in the game, which does take away some of the challenge of zombies, in my opinion. Now, I'm going to say an opinion that's kind of controversial, but I don't think loadouts necessarily need to disappear. I just think they need to be designed differently. Like, imagine a system where you can choose from any starting weapon you want, but that weapon is so weak to the point where, like, by round 5, you're going to have to, like, upgrade it or something, or swap it out. Like, I think that's literally one thing they can do to balance loadouts, is literally just make it so the gun is super duper weak in high rounds until you upgrade upgrade the rarity or something. If anything, if they really want to balance the game, I honestly think the Black Ops 4 loadout system is honestly a great middle ground. Because while yes, you can basically choose whatever starting weapon you want to load in with, you're also pretty limited, and some of the starting weapons are like not very good at all. For example, in my opinion, the best weapon to start with in Black Ops 4 is the Strife, but after like round 5 or so, it gets so weak to the point where you're going to want to get a different weapon anyway. Like, you do have the option to change your starting weapon if you want, but the main weapon that you're going to spawn in with before you have created class unlocked is the Welling. Like, BO4 definitely had loadouts, but I feel like it was a lot more strict than it is nowadays, as like I said, you're limited to the amount of weapons that you're allowed to spawn in with. Something like that I feel like would be a decent compromise, where you can still have your loadout weapon without necessarily being overpowered in the very beginning of the game. Or like I said, just make the weapon weaker when you spawn in with it. Like, if it doesn't have a rarity on it, that should be like the weakest gun in the game, to be honest. Like, imagine a system where you can choose your own starting weapon, but it's way weaker than everything else in the game, because that way it would at least make people want to hit the mystery box or use wall buys a little bit more, because that way you still get the freedom of being able to choose however you want to play without necessarily breaking the gameplay loop. Another thing they could do is limit it to only a couple weapon classes that you're allowed to spawn in with. Like, maybe you're only allowed like a few SMGs or maybe a shotgun or something to load in with. That way you have all of the shittier weapons to load in with, which then during the match you can start getting better weapons and stuff. I think whether or not people want loadouts in zombies just comes down to the question of what do they want zombies to be in the first place. Because if zombies is supposed to be a survival sandbox where every game develops differently, then having too much control over your starting setup can hurt that experience a little bit. But if zombies is evolving into a more customizable objective-based mode where players are expected to build specific strategies, then loadouts actually make a lot of sense, and I don't think either approach is necessarily even wrong. The problem happens when a game tries to do both without trying to find the right balance. Like, I think if they just balance loadouts a little bit better, I feel like less people would be complaining about this system, because I genuinely don't think that loadouts should be removed from zombies. I just think they should be balanced a little bit better, because in my opinion, the best zombies experience is one where you have some control, but you're also forced to adapt somehow. Like, you have to upgrade your gear and weapons somehow. If they can just find a way to balance it where they can keep loadouts in the game, but also make the mystery box way more important, that would be really good. Because zombies to me is all about the intensity and the randomness and stuff, and the fact that you feel unsafe constantly. But that's just my opinion. I want to know what you guys think about loadouts. Do you think loadouts belong in COD Zombies, or do you think they completely go against what made the mode special? Like, do you really like starting with a pistol every single match, or do you like being able to customize your own loadout before you get into it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe and turn on notifications as well, as there's a lot of people watching my videos that aren't necessarily subscribed, so that would be appreciated, but you don't have to. All right, that's all I got for this video. See ya.